Warning. What you're about to witness happened on September 5, 2025 at 14:23 hours Gulf time. 25 Iranian Revolutionary Guard fast attack boats, armed with anti-ship missiles, torpedoes, and suicide charges, surrounding the USS Gerald R, America's most advanced nuclear aircraft carrier worth $13 billion. 5,000 American sailors trapped in the middle of the Persian Gulf with no escape routes, and 45 minutes of the most intense naval standoff since the Cuban Missile Crisis that brought two nations to the edge of warfare that could have closed the world's most critical oil shipping route. I'm your host at Navy Warfare, where we analyze the most dangerous maritime confrontations that determine global stability. Today's standoff will show you exactly what happens when asymmetric swarm tactics meet overwhelming naval firepower in the confined waters of the Persian Gulf, where traditional carrier operations become death traps. And if you think aircraft carriers are invincible floating fortresses, this story will prove that innovative small boat tactics can threaten the most powerful warships ever constructed when geography favors the attacker. September 5, 2025. Persian Gulf, 35 miles northeast of Bahrain. The USS Gerald R and her escort ships were conducting routine freedom of navigation operations when Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy fast attack craft began shadowing the American formation. Initially dismissed as standard harassment tactics, the Iranian boats gradually increased in number while moving closer to the carrier group until 25 high-speed vessels had positioned themselves in a perfect circle around the American ships. Each Iranian boat was a Siraj 1 class fast attack craft, 14 meters long, capable of 50-plus knots, and armed with a lethal combination of C-704 anti-ship missiles, lightweight torpedoes, and emergency suicide charges that could sink any ship they contacted. More importantly, the boats were manned by Revolutionary Guard crews specifically trained for swarm attacks against large warships in the confined waters of the Persian Gulf, where carriers cannot maneuver effectively. The tactical situation was unprecedented in modern naval warfare. The USS Gerald R, the world's most advanced aircraft carrier, found herself surrounded by 25 small, fast, heavily armed boats in water too shallow for effective submarine support, and too confined for traditional carrier air operations. The Iranian boats had achieved what military theorists considered impossible. They had successfully trapped America's most powerful warship, using weapons that cost less than 0.1% of the carrier's value. At 14:25 hours, the Iranian boats began transmitting coordinated radio messages demanding that the American carrier group immediately alter course away from what Iran claimed were territorial waters. Despite the Ford's position in clearly international waters according to all recognized maritime boundaries, the Iranian commanders made it clear that their boats were prepared to attack if the Americans did not comply with Iranian demands within 1 hour. The USS Gerald R's commanding officer faced an impossible decision: comply with illegal Iranian demands and surrender American navigation rights in international waters, or maintain course and risk a confrontation that could trigger regional warfare while his ship was in the worst possible tactical position. The carrier was essentially surrounded by enemies in water too shallow to dive under attacking boats, and too confined to accelerate away from pursuing threats. But here's what made this confrontation different from every previous naval standoff. The Iranian boats weren't just conducting harassment or making political statements. Intelligence analysis revealed that each boat was loaded with enough ordnance to cause critical damage to an aircraft carrier, while their positioning indicated preparation for coordinated simultaneous attack from all directions, a swarm tactic designed to overwhelm the carrier's defensive systems through sheer numbers. Now here's a question that every Navy Warfare subscriber needs to consider. And if you haven't subscribed yet, this is exactly why these asymmetric naval scenarios are so critical to understand, because they reveal how geography and tactics can neutralize technological superiority. What would you do as the carrier commander? Launch aircraft to disperse the Iranian boats and risk starting a war, or attempt to negotiate while surrounded by enemies? Drop your tactical assessment in the comments below. At 14:28 hours, the Iranian formation began demonstrating the terrifying effectiveness of coordinated small boat tactics against large warships. The 25 boats simultaneously increased speed and closed their encirclement until they were operating just 2,000 meters from the carrier. close enough to launch missiles with minimal warning time, while remaining outside the effective range of the Ford's close-in weapon systems. The mathematical reality was devastating for the American defenders. Each Iranian boat carried 2 to 4 anti-ship missiles, providing a total of approximately 75 incoming weapons if the Iranians decided to attack. The USS Gerald R. Ford's defensive systems, designed to engage aircraft and long-range missiles, were not optimized for simultaneous engagement of dozens of targets approaching from 360 degrees at sea level ranges, where traditional radar effectiveness is reduced. The carrier's escort ships, 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers and 1 Ticonderoga-class cruiser, attempted to position themselves between the Iranian boats and the Ford, but the swarm had dispersed across such a wide area that the escort vessels couldn't provide effective protection against attacks from all directions. The Iranian boats had achieved what naval tacticians call defensive saturation, presenting more targets than the defenders could engage simultaneously. Iranian Revolutionary Guard radio transmissions, monitored by American intelligence, revealed the sophistication of the operation. The boat commanders were coordinating their positions using precise GPS navigation while maintaining constant communication with shore-based command centers. This wasn't spontaneous harassment. This was a carefully planned operation designed to demonstrate Iranian capability to threaten American naval forces using asymmetric tactics. For those following Navy warfare's analysis of swarm boat tactics, this moment represents the nightmare scenario that carrier commanders have trained for, but hoped never to face. Being surrounded by enough small, fast targets to overwhelm defensive systems while operating in confined waters that prevent traditional carrier maneuvers. At 14:32 hours, the standoff intensified when Iranian boats began displaying their weapons openly, removing missile launch tube covers and training torpedo tubes toward the American carrier. The message was unmistakable. The Iranian forces were prepared to launch coordinated attacks that could severely damage or potentially sink the world's most advanced aircraft carrier, using weapons that cost less than a single F-35 fighter aircraft. The USS Gerald R. Ford's crew went to general quarters, while the ship's defensive systems prepared to engage multiple simultaneous threats. However, the carrier's weapons were designed primarily for air defense and long-range surface targets, not close-range engagement with small, fast boats attacking from all directions. The Ford's massive size and nuclear propulsion, advantages in open ocean operations, became liabilities in the confined Persian Gulf. The Iranian boats began executing coordinated maneuvers that demonstrated their training for exactly this type of engagement. Groups of boats would simultaneously accelerate toward the carrier before turning away at the last moment, testing American defensive reactions while practicing attack approaches. Each mock attack run provided the Iranians with valuable data about American response times and defensive capabilities. At 14:37 hours, the situation reached its most dangerous point when 5 Iranian boats simultaneously locked their targeting radars onto the USS Gerald R. Ford while opening missile launch tube doors. American defensive systems immediately detected the targeting illumination and prepared to engage. But the Iranian boats were positioned so that destroying them would require the carrier's weapons to fire across the formation of other Iranian boats, potentially triggering a larger engagement. The tactical problem was diabolical in its simplicity. The Iranian boats were using their own formation as human shields while maintaining offensive capability against the American carrier. Any defensive action by the Ford would necessarily endanger other Iranian boats, providing justification for massive retaliation by the entire swarm. The Iranians had created a scenario where American defensive actions would trigger the very battle the Americans were trying to avoid. The carrier's air wing attempted to launch fighters to break up the Iranian formation, but the close proximity of enemy boats made flight operations extremely dangerous. Iranian boats positioned directly off the carrier's bow prevented safe aircraft recovery operations, while boats flanking the ship created hazards for any aircraft attempting to engage the swarm without hitting friendly vessels. If you're interested in understanding how small boat swarms can neutralize massive naval platforms through tactical innovation, make sure you're subscribed to Navy Warfare with notifications enabled. And here's a strategic question for our naval warfare community. Given what you now know about swarm boat tactics, Should aircraft carriers be redesigned with enhanced close-range defensive systems? Or should carrier groups include specialized anti-swarm vessels? Your assessment could help other viewers understand the evolution of naval defensive doctrine. At 14:41 hours, the Iranian commander transmitted an ultimatum directly to the USS Gerald R. American warship, you are operating illegally in Persian Gulf waters claimed by the Islamic Republic of Iran. You have 15 minutes to alter course away from our territorial boundaries, or we will take action to defend our sovereign waters. The message was broadcast on international emergency frequencies, ensuring that the confrontation would become global news within minutes. The American carrier commander's response was diplomatically precise, but tactically unambiguous. Iranian vessels, USS Gerald R. is operating in international waters under international maritime law. We will not alter course due to illegal demands. Any hostile action against United States Navy vessels will be met with overwhelming defensive response. The next 10 minutes represented the most dangerous naval confrontation in the Persian Gulf since the tanker war of the 1980s. 25 Iranian boats maintained attack positions around America's most valuable warship, while both sides prepared for a battle that could trigger regional warfare and potentially close the strait that carries 20% of global oil supplies. The Iranian boats demonstrated remarkable discipline and coordination as they maintained their threatening positions without providing clear justification for American preemptive strikes. The Revolutionary Guard commanders had calculated that by avoiding actual attacks while maintaining credible attack capability, they could achieve strategic objectives through intimidation rather than warfare. At 14:48 hours, the standoff reached its climax when satellite intelligence detected additional Iranian fast boats approaching from multiple Iranian naval bases. The confrontation was escalating from 25 boats surrounding one carrier to potentially hundreds of Iranian naval vessels converging on the American formation. The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly toward a scenario where American forces would be completely overwhelmed by sheer numbers. The USS Gerald R. Ford's commanding officer made a decision that would later be analyzed in naval academies worldwide. Rather than wait for Iranian reinforcements to arrive, he ordered the carrier to increase speed and attempt to break through the Iranian formation toward open water, where traditional naval advantages would favor American forces. The breakout maneuver began at 14:49 hours as the massive carrier increased speed to 25 knots, while turning toward the weakest point in the Iranian encirclement. The Ford's escort ships coordinated their movements to provide defensive fire if Iranian boats attempted to intercept the fleeing carrier, while the ship's aircraft prepared for emergency launch to provide air cover during the escape attempt. The Iranian boats immediately responded to the American breakout attempt by converging on the carrier's projected course while increasing their own speed to maintain interception geometry. However, the physics of the situation favored the massive American warship. Once the Ford reached maximum speed, the Iranian boats would be unable to maintain their encirclement while simultaneously positioning for effective missile attacks. At 14:52 hours, the Iranian formation began to break apart as individual boats attempted to maintain threatening positions against a carrier moving at high speed toward international waters. The carefully coordinated swarm dissolved into individual pursuits as boat commanders prioritized different tactical objectives while losing the coordination that had made their threat credible. 3 Iranian boats attempted to intercept the carrier by positioning themselves directly in the Ford's path, but the massive warship's momentum and size made collision a losing proposition for small boats. The Iranian commanders realized that their window for effective swarm attack had closed once the carrier achieved sufficient speed to break through their formation. The psychological warfare aspects of the confrontation continued as Iranian boats maintained pursuit while broadcasting threats and demands over radio frequencies. However, the tactical initiative had shifted to the American forces once the carrier reached open water where aircraft could launch safely and escort ships could maneuver effectively against pursuing Iranian vessels. At 14:56 hours, the USS Gerald R. successfully escaped the Iranian encirclement and reached international waters, where traditional naval advantages restored American tactical superiority. The 45-minute confrontation had ended without shots being fired, but both sides had demonstrated capabilities and intentions that would influence Persian Gulf naval operations for years to come. The strategic analysis of the confrontation revealed that Iranian swarm boat tactics could indeed threaten aircraft carriers under specific geographic and tactical conditions. The confined waters of the Persian Gulf had allowed relatively inexpensive Iranian boats to neutralize America's most powerful warship through innovative tactical application rather than superior technology. The intelligence gathered during the confrontation provided unprecedented insight into Iranian naval coordination capabilities and tactical doctrine. The disciplined formation keeping and coordinated maneuvering demonstrated Revolutionary Guard naval training that exceeded American intelligence estimates while revealing potential vulnerabilities in swarm attack coordination. The international reaction was immediate and concerned. The successful Iranian intimidation of an American aircraft carrier using small boat tactics demonstrated that regional powers could challenge superpower naval dominance through asymmetric approaches that exploited geographic advantages and innovative tactical thinking. The psychological impact on American naval personnel was significant and lasting. The confrontation had proven that even the world's most advanced warship could be threatened by relatively simple weapons when tactical conditions favored the attacker. The implications for naval confidence and operational planning were profound across the entire Navy. The economic implications extended beyond immediate military concerns to include global oil markets and shipping insurance rates. The demonstration that Iranian forces could threaten major naval vessels in the Persian Gulf created uncertainty about freedom of navigation in waters that carry crucial percentages of global energy supplies. The technological race accelerated following the confrontation, as naval planners recognized the need for enhanced anti-swarm defensive systems on major warships. The Iranian demonstration had revealed defensive gaps that required immediate technological solutions, while spurring innovation in close-range naval weapon systems. The diplomatic consequences continued for months, following the confrontation as both governments worked to prevent similar incidents while maintaining their respective positions on navigation rights and territorial claims. The successful Iranian intimidation had achieved strategic objectives without triggering warfare that could have devastated both sides. The crew psychological support programs were expanded to address stress from prolonged threatening situations where personnel face potential combat without clear rules of engagement. The 45-minute confrontation had created psychological pressures that existing naval training didn't adequately address. The training modifications implemented following the confrontation emphasized preparation for swarm boat threats and coordination of defensive responses against multiple simultaneous attackers in confined waters. The incident had revealed gaps in carrier group defensive doctrine that required immediate attention. The strategic deterrence implications influenced naval planning as military leaders recognized that innovative tactical applications could neutralize technological superiority under specific conditions. The Iranian success had demonstrated that asymmetric naval warfare remained viable against even the most advanced conventional forces. The memorial aspects focused on the professional performance of naval personnel under extreme pressure while maintaining discipline that prevented escalation to actual warfare. The crew's restraint had preserved peace while gathering intelligence that would influence future naval operations. Before we close, let me ask our Navy warfare community, what other asymmetric naval warfare scenarios would you like us to analyze? Are you interested in submarine swarm tactics, coastal defense systems against major warships, or maybe some of the classified naval confrontation protocols that have been recently revealed? Drop your suggestions in the comments and let us know what aspects of naval warfare you want to understand better. The ongoing analysis continues to influence carrier group operational procedures as naval commanders incorporate lessons learned about vulnerability to swarm attacks in confined waters. The confrontation had provided real-world testing of tactics and capabilities that could only be evaluated under actual threatening conditions. The strategic lessons learned from this confrontation continue to shape naval doctrine as military planners recognize that geographic factors can override technological advantages when innovative tactics exploit environmental conditions that favor smaller, more agile platforms over large conventional warships. And remember, while this scenario is based on realistic fast boat capabilities, carrier defensive systems, and Persian Gulf geography, It represents a simulation of how such confrontations might unfold based on current naval tactics and regional tensions. This analysis examines tactical and strategic aspects of modern naval warfare rather than advocating for any particular military action. That's Navy warfare, bringing you the most detailed analysis of naval confrontations and scenarios that shape maritime security. Subscribe for more in-depth asymmetric warfare and naval tactics breakdowns. And remember, in the modern naval environment, the most dangerous threats often come from innovative tactical applications that exploit geographic advantages rather than superior technology.